I watched in absolute horror as two police officers dragged my 9-year-old son Tyler away in handcuffs, while my own parents and brother stood on their front porch, arms crossed, refusing to help. The metal cuffs looked enormous on his tiny wrists as he screamed for me, tears streaming down his terrified face. My brother Marcus had just destroyed an innocent child's life with lies, and my mother Linda actually nodded approvingly at the officers while my father Robert looked away in cowardice. This wasn't supposed to happen at a family barbecue on Memorial Day. My name is Anton, and until that devastating afternoon, I believed I had the kind of family most people dream about. At 32, I had built what seemed like the perfect life in suburban Denver. My career as a senior software engineer at a growing tech startup provided financial security that allowed my wife Sarah and me to give our son Tyler everything he needed. We lived in a beautiful colonial house with a white picket fence complete with the golden retriever named Scout that Tyler had begged for since he turned 6. Sarah worked as a pediatric nurse at Children's Hospital, and we both took immense pride in raising Tyler to be kind, honest, and respectful. He excelled in 3rd grade, played Little League baseball every Saturday, and had never so much as received a timeout at school. Teachers consistently praised his gentle nature and helpful attitude toward classmates who struggled with assignments. My younger brother Marcus painted a starkly different picture of success. At 28, he had bounced between various sales jobs before settling into real estate 3 years ago. His income fluctuated wildly depending on market conditions and his inconsistent work ethic. While I had married my college sweetheart and built stability, Marcus cycled through relationships that never lasted longer than 6 months. He lived in a cramped apartment across town and drove a leased BMW that consumed most of his commission checks. Our parents had always treated Marcus like the golden child, despite his obvious shortcomings. Robert owned a small accounting firm that had served middle-class families for nearly 3 decades, while Linda worked as a registered nurse at the local hospital. They lived in the same ranch house where Marcus and I grew up mortgage-free and comfortable in their retirement planning. Yet they constantly worried about Marcus while taking my achievements for granted. Family gatherings had become increasingly uncomfortable over the past year. Marcus would make cutting remarks about my parenting style, suggesting that Tyler was spoiled and undisciplined. He questioned whether we were teaching our son proper values, implying that our comfortable lifestyle was somehow damaging his character. These comments always came disguised as brotherly concern, but the underlying resentment was obvious to everyone except our parents. The tension escalated dramatically 3 months earlier when Marcus approached me about investing in a house-flipping venture. He needed $20,000 to secure a property that would supposedly generate massive profits within 6 months. His business plan consisted of handwritten notes on napkins and wild promises about guaranteed returns that defied market reality. When I declined to risk our family's emergency fund on his scheme, Marcus became visibly angry and accused me of being selfish and unsupportive. That confrontation marked a turning point in our relationship. Marcus began arriving late to family dinners and leaving early, but not before making increasingly hostile comments about my family. He criticized Sarah's cooking, questioned my parenting decisions, and even suggested that Tyler exhibited behavioral problems that we were ignoring. Our parents never defended us against these attacks, instead changing the subject or making excuses for Marcus's rudeness. The most disturbing incident occurred during Easter dinner when Marcus cornered Tyler in the hallway and questioned him about expensive items in our house. He asked detailed questions about my home office equipment, Sarah's jewelry, and even Tyler's gaming console. When Tyler mentioned these strange conversations to us later that evening, I confronted Marcus directly. He brushed off my concerns and claimed he was simply making conversation with his nephew. Looking back, I should have recognized these interactions as reconnaissance missions rather than casual family moments. Marcus was studying our home, our routines, and our vulnerabilities with the calculating precision of someone planning an attack. But I was too trusting, too hopeful that family bonds would ultimately prevail over whatever jealousy was poisoning his heart. The weeks leading up to Memorial Day brought subtle changes in family dynamics that I failed to interpret correctly. Marcus seemed unusually confident during phone calls with our parents, and I often caught the end of hushed conversations that stopped abruptly when I entered rooms. Linda began asking pointed questions about Tyler's behavior at school and whether we had noticed any concerning changes in his personality. These inquiries felt invasive and unnecessary, but I answered honestly because I had nothing to hide. Robert started making comments about the importance of accountability and consequences for children who make mistakes. He shared stories from his accounting practice about clients whose children had developed serious problems because parents failed to address early warning signs. These lectures felt directed at me personally, though he never explicitly said so. The underlying message was clear: I was supposedly failing as a father by not being strict enough with Tyler. Despite these mounting red flags, I convinced Sarah that we should attend the Memorial Day barbecue. Tyler loved spending time with his cousins, and I hoped that a relaxed family gathering might restore some normalcy to our relationships. I believed that Marcus would eventually mature past his jealousy, and that our parents would remember their role as grandparents rather than enablers of toxic behavior. That optimism would prove to be the most naive mistake of my life. As I loaded Tyler's bicycle into our SUV that Monday morning, I had no idea that I was driving my innocent son directly into a trap that would shatter our family forever and teach me that blood relationships mean nothing when people choose cruelty over love. Marcus had spent months planning something far more sinister than I could have imagined. And the most devastating part was that my own parents would become willing participants in destroying their grandson's childhood. But I was still living in the illusion that family meant protection, loyalty, and unconditional love. That fantasy was about to be violently ripped away in front of an audience of neighbors who would witness our humiliation and Tyler's trauma. The drive to my parents' house took only 15 minutes, but it would mark the last time my son felt safe and secure in the presence of his extended family. Everything I thought I knew about the people who raised me was about to crumble, revealing the ugly truth that some people will sacrifice anyone, even innocent children, to protect their own interests and enable destructive behavior. The barbecue started exactly as I had hoped it would. The late May weather was perfect, with temperatures in the mid-70s and a gentle breeze that carried the scent of blooming lilacs from Linda's garden. Extended family had gathered in the spacious backyard, including my cousins David and Jennifer, with their children, creating the kind of multi-generational celebration that Tyler treasured. He immediately ran off to play basketball with his cousins, while Sarah helped Linda arrange side dishes on the picnic tables. I took charge of grilling responsibilities, manning the gas barbecue that Robert had purchased last summer. The familiar routine of flipping burgers and rotating hot dogs while chatting with family members felt comforting and normal. David updated me on his promotion at the insurance company, while Jennifer shared stories about her daughter's success on the high school debate team. These conversations reminded me why family gatherings had always been important to me, despite recent tensions. Marcus arrived 40 minutes late, which wasn't unusual, but his demeanor struck me as oddly confident and energetic. He wore expensive sunglasses and a designer polo shirt that probably cost more than he should have been spending given his financial struggles. Throughout the afternoon, he kept checking his smartphone with barely concealed excitement, as if anticipating important news or messages. When relatives tried to engage him in conversation, he responded with distracted half-answers while his attention remained focused on the device. The children played enthusiastically on the swing set and trampoline that had entertained Marcus and me during our own childhood. Tyler's laughter echoed across the yard as he chased his younger cousins in an elaborate game of tag that involved complex rules they invented on the spot. Watching him interact so naturally and kindly with the other kids filled me with parental pride. He helped his 5-year-old cousin Emma reach the monkey bars and patiently taught 7-year-old Noah how to properly shoot basketball free throws. Midway through the gathering, as I was preparing the second round of hamburgers, Marcus approached our parents and requested a private conversation. The three of them disappeared into the house while I continued cooking, and Sarah played cornhole with the children. I assumed they were discussing Marcus's latest business venture or relationship drama topics that had dominated recent family meetings. After 20 minutes, I began to notice pointed glances directed toward Tyler from the kitchen window. Linda stood with her arms crossed, wearing the stern expression she reserved for serious discussions about disappointing behavior. Robert paced back and forth while gesturing emphatically, clearly agitated about something significant. Marcus pointed repeatedly toward the backyard where Tyler was innocently playing his face, animated with apparent urgency. When the trio finally emerged from the house, their body language had completely transformed. Linda avoided eye contact with me while Robert wore the grim expression of someone preparing to deliver terrible news. Marcus, however, seemed almost gleeful as he surveyed the backyard scene with obvious satisfaction. The stark contrast between his mood and our parents' discomfort should have warned me that something catastrophic was about to unfold. Marcus called for everyone's attention by tapping his beer bottle with a metal spoon, creating sharp chimes that cut through the afternoon conversations. The extended family gathered around the patio, expecting perhaps a toast or announcement about his latest romantic relationship. Tyler abandoned his basketball game and jogged over to join the adults, his face flushed with exercise and completely innocent of any wrongdoing. The accusation came like a lightning strike with no warning clouds. Marcus announced that his expensive Rolex watch had been stolen during our last family visit 2 weeks ago, and he had compelling evidence that Tyler was responsible for the theft. The words hung in the air like toxic smoke as every adult turned to stare at my 9-year-old son, who looked completely bewildered by the sudden shift in atmosphere. I immediately stepped forward to defend Tyler, pointing out that he had never shown any interest in jewelry and barely understood the concept of expensive timepieces. Marcus cut off my protest by producing his smartphone and displaying what he claimed was security camera footage from his apartment. The grainy video supposedly showed a small figure entering his bedroom during our previous visit, though the image quality made positive identification impossible. The accusations escalated rapidly as Marcus claimed this was part of a disturbing pattern of theft that had been continuing for months. He alleged that Tyler had stolen cash from Linda's purse during Easter dinner and had taken David's spare car keys during a birthday celebration in March. These supposed incidents were completely fabricated, but Marcus delivered each claim with such convincing detail that I could see doubt creeping into the faces of family members who should have known better. Tyler began crying as the adult conversations grew louder and more heated. He denied taking anything and looked to me for protection from accusations he couldn't understand. Sarah moved to comfort him, while I demanded that Marcus explain why he had waited 2 weeks to report a theft of such an expensive item. His answer chilled me to the bone. He claimed he had been conducting his own investigation to gather sufficient evidence before involving authorities. Robert and Linda joined Marcus in demanding that Tyler confess to his crimes and reveal the location of the stolen items. They spoke with the authority of grandparents who believed they were addressing serious behavioral problems that required immediate intervention. Linda even suggested that Tyler had been exhibiting troubling signs of dishonesty during recent visits, though she provided no specific examples of this alleged behavior pattern. The most shocking moment came when I appealed directly to my parents' common sense and asked them to consider Tyler's character and track record of honesty. Instead of defending their grandson, they exchanged meaningful looks and supported Marcus's version of events. Robert announced that they had discussed the situation thoroughly and agreed that Tyler needed to face consequences for his actions before the behavior escalated further. Marcus then delivered the ultimatum that revealed the true depth of his malicious planning. He gave Tyler exactly 10 minutes to confess to the theft and provide information about the watch's location, or he would contact police and file formal charges. The threat was delivered with cold calculation, and I realized this confrontation had been orchestrated as a public humiliation designed to destroy my family's reputation in front of witnesses. Tyler's sobs grew louder as he continued to protest his innocence while facing a wall of adult accusers who refused to listen to reason. I tried desperately to de-escalate the situation by offering to replace the supposedly stolen watch, but Marcus rejected any compromise solutions, He insisted that only a full confession and criminal prosecution would adequately address Tyler's behavioral problems. As the 10-minute deadline approached, I watched my parents make the conscious decision to prioritize Marcus's lies over their innocent grandson's well-being. They stood beside him in unified support, while Tyler clung to Sarah's legs and begged to go home. The sight of their cold indifference toward a terrified child revealed character flaws that I had somehow missed during 32 years of believing they were decent people. Marcus checked his phone with theatrical precision and announced that time had expired. Tyler had maintained his innocence throughout the ordeal, which Marcus claimed proved he was both a thief and a liar, who refused to accept responsibility for his actions. The trap had been perfectly designed to ensure that any response from Tyler would be interpreted as evidence of guilt. That's when Marcus revealed the most devastating part of his plan. He informed everyone that he had already contacted police and filed a detailed theft report complete with evidence and witness statements. Squad cars were already en route to execute an arrest warrant for Tyler, and nothing could stop the legal machinery that Marcus had set in motion hours before the barbecue even began. The sound of approaching sirens confirmed that this had never been about recovering stolen property or teaching moral lessons. This was a calculated attack designed to traumatize my child and destroy my family's reputation through public humiliation. Marcus had spent months planning this moment, and my parents had knowingly participated in sacrificing their grandson to protect their golden child's lies. 2 patrol cars pulled into the driveway with their emergency lights flashing immediately, drawing attention from neighbors who emerged from their homes to witness the unfolding drama. Officers Bradley Chen and Maria Santos approached the backyard with the confident stride of law enforcement professionals responding to a routine call about juvenile theft. They wore full uniforms complete with body cameras, handcuffs, and other equipment that seemed absurdly intimidating for an encounter with a 9-year-old child. Tyler instinctively moved closer to me as the officers entered our family gathering, his small hand gripping mine with desperate strength. The extended family members stepped back to create space, their expressions shifting from confusion to shocked realization that this situation had escalated far beyond a simple family dispute. David's children began crying as they watched their adult relatives argue with police officers about their young cousin. Officer Chen consulted his notepad and confirmed Tyler's identity before explaining that they possessed a valid arrest warrant based on theft charges filed by Marcus earlier that morning. The formal language of criminal procedure sounded surreal when applied to a child who still believed in tooth fairies and wrote letters to Santa Claus. Chen emphasized that they were required to follow departmental protocol regardless of Tyler's age or the family setting. I launched into desperate explanations about Tyler's character, his perfect record at school, and the obvious impossibility of him committing theft against family members. Officer Santos listened patiently, but explained that their role was enforcement rather than investigation, and that questions about evidence would be addressed during the legal process. She assured me that juvenile cases received special handling, but that didn't diminish the immediate trauma of arrest procedures. The most devastating moment came when I turned to my parents for support, expecting them to intervene on behalf of their grandson's obvious innocence. Instead of rushing to Tyler's defense, they took deliberate steps backward and crossed their arms in gestures of withdrawal from the situation. Linda actually spoke directly to the officers, informing them that Marcus had always been truthful about important matters and that she trusted his judgment completely. Robert nodded in agreement and added that Tyler might benefit from learning about consequences for inappropriate behavior. His words hit me like physical blows as I realized that my own father was actively supporting the arrest of his innocent grandson. The man who had taught me about integrity and justice was now participating in a travesty that would traumatize a child based on fabricated evidence. Tyler's terrified cries for Daddy echoed across the backyard as Officer Chen explained arrest procedures for juveniles. The child-sized handcuffs looked like medieval torture devices as they clicked around Tyler's thin wrists, and his desperate questions about why this was happening broke my heart into pieces that would never fully heal. The sight of my son being treated like a criminal while his own grandparents watched approvingly revealed a depth of family betrayal that I couldn't have imagined in my worst nightmares. Sarah tried to intervene by demanding to see the arrest warrant and questioning the evidence that justified such extreme action against a young child. Officer Santos produced the paperwork which detailed Marcus's claims about ongoing theft patterns and provided supposed witness statements from family members. The document looked official and comprehensive, clearly the result of careful preparation rather than spontaneous accusations. Neighbors gathered along their property lines to observe the spectacle, some recording the incident with their smartphones, while others whispered among themselves about the shocking scene. Mrs. Patterson from next door shook her head in obvious disapproval, though whether she was judging Tyler or the adults remained unclear. The public nature of the humiliation added another layer of trauma to an already devastating experience. As Tyler was led toward the patrol car, he turned back toward his grandparents with tears streaming down his face and asked why they weren't helping him. The simple question contained such pure confusion and trust that it should have melted any decent person's heart. Instead, Linda looked away while Robert studied his shoes, both of them choosing to enable Marcus's cruelty rather than protect an innocent child who loved them unconditionally. The most shocking revelation came just as Tyler was being placed in the back seat of the squad car. While Marcus was speaking with the officers about follow-up procedures, I noticed something metallic protruding from his front pocket. The distinctive gold and silver pattern was unmistakably his supposedly stolen Rolex watch, sitting exactly where he would normally keep it during casual gatherings. My shout of recognition drew everyone's attention to Marcus's pocket, where the evidence of his elaborate deception was clearly visible. He quickly tried to push the watch deeper into his clothing, but Officer Chen had already noticed the suspicious movement and requested that Marcus produce the item for examination. The expensive timepiece emerged in perfect condition, completely contradicting his claims about theft and proving that this entire scenario had been orchestrated with malicious intent. Marcus stammered excuses about recently finding the watch in his car and forgetting to mention its recovery to the officers. His explanation made no logical sense given that he had filed theft charges just hours earlier, but the damage to Tyler's emotional state had already been inflicted. The sight of handcuffs on his small wrists and the trauma of being arrested in front of extended family could never be undone regardless of any subsequent revelations about false accusations. Officer Santos immediately recognized the inconsistencies in Marcus's story and began questioning him about the timeline of events surrounding the supposed theft and recovery. Her professional demeanor shifted toward obvious suspicion as Marcus provided contradictory information about when he had last seen the watch and why he had proceeded with filing criminal charges despite having recovered the allegedly stolen property. The extended family members began backing away from Marcus as they realized they had witnessed him deliberately orchestrating the false arrest of a 9-year-old child. David demanded explanations for why Marcus would traumatize Tyler with such elaborate lies, while Jennifer openly questioned whether they should contact Child Protective Services about the incident. The social consequences of Marcus's actions were beginning to unfold in real time. But the most profound betrayal came from my parents' continued support of Marcus, even after his deception had been exposed. Rather than apologizing to Tyler or demanding his immediate release, they insisted that he must have stolen something else, and that the arrest was still justified based on his supposedly problematic behavior patterns. Their willingness to sacrifice their grandson's well-being to protect Marcus revealed character flaws that made me question everything I thought I knew about them. Tyler remained in the patrol car, still handcuffed and sobbing, while the adults argued about evidence and procedures. The sight of his terrified face pressed against the window would haunt my dreams for months afterward. He kept mouthing the word "daddy" while reaching toward me with his restricted hands, and I felt completely powerless to protect him from this nightmare that his own family members had created. Officer Chen began the process of releasing Tyler from custody once Marcus's lies were exposed, but the psychological damage had been completed. My son had learned that family members could be trusted to inflict devastating harm based on fabricated accusations, and that even grandparents would choose favoritism over justice when protecting innocent children required courage. As the handcuffs were removed from Tyler's wrists, I realized that this incident had permanently altered our family dynamics and revealed truths about my parents and brother that could never be forgotten or forgiven. The Memorial Day barbecue had become the day when Tyler lost his sense of security, and I lost my illusions about the people who raised me. Within hours of Tyler's release, I had contacted attorney Jessica Crawford, a family law specialist with an outstanding reputation for defending children's rights in complex cases. Her office occupied the 20th floor of downtown Denver's most prestigious legal building, and her credentials included successful litigation against law enforcement agencies that had mishandled juvenile cases. Jessica listened to our story with professional intensity while taking detailed notes about every aspect of Marcus's deception. Jessica immediately recommended hiring private investigator Dan Rodriguez, whose background in financial crimes and family fraud made him uniquely qualified to uncover the full scope of Marcus's scheme. Dan operated from a modest office in Cherry Creek, but his wall displayed certificates from the FBI Training Academy and commendations from multiple law enforcement agencies. His first priority involved securing all physical evidence before Marcus could destroy documentation or manipulate witnesses. The initial investigation revealed disturbing patterns that extended far beyond the false theft accusations. Dan discovered that Marcus had accumulated gambling debts totaling over $40,000 with underground poker operations that charged astronomical interest rates. Text messages recovered from his phone showed increasingly desperate communications with loan sharks who threatened physical violence if payments weren't received within specific deadlines. Financial records subpoenaed by Jessica revealed that Marcus had maxed out 6 credit cards and borrowed against his real estate license to fund his gambling addiction. His apartment lease was 3 months behind, and he had received eviction notices that he had hidden from our parents. The pressure to generate quick cash had apparently driven him to orchestrate the elaborate scheme against Tyler as either a way to extort money from me or destroy my reputation out of pure spite. Meanwhile, Tyler struggled with severe emotional trauma that required intensive counseling sessions with child psychologist Dr. Amanda Foster. He developed nightmares about police officers and refused to attend school for 2 weeks following the arrest. Simple activities like playing with friends became sources of anxiety because Tyler feared that someone might accuse him of wrongdoing without warning. The confident, happy child who had played basketball just days earlier had been replaced by a nervous, withdrawn boy who startled at unexpected sounds. Sarah blamed me for exposing Tyler to my toxic family, despite years of warning signs about Marcus's jealousy and our parents' enabling behavior. Our marriage faced its most serious crisis as we struggled to help Tyler heal while dealing with the legal and emotional aftermath of his traumatic arrest. Sarah took extended leave from her nursing job to focus on Tyler's recovery, creating additional financial stress that compounded our relationship challenges. Dan's investigation expanded to include Marcus's professional activities, revealing a pattern of unethical behavior in his real estate practice. Former clients provided statements about missing deposit checks, forged documents, and property showings that never actually occurred, despite commission charges. The Colorado Real Estate Commission had received multiple complaints about Marcus's conduct, but individual victims lacked the resources to pursue comprehensive investigations. The most shocking discovery came when Dan uncovered Marcus's previous attempt at a similar scheme 3 years earlier. Our cousin Patricia's family had quietly dealt with false accusations that Marcus made against their teenage son regarding stolen electronics. Patricia confirmed that Marcus had used identical tactics, including planted evidence and demands for confession before involving authorities. Our parents had pressured Patricia to handle the situation privately to avoid family scandal. This revelation proved that Linda and Robert knew Marcus was capable of fabricating elaborate lies to frame innocent family members, yet they had still chosen to support his accusations against Tyler. Their betrayal wasn't based on mistaken judgment or temporary confusion. It represented a deliberate decision to enable Marcus's destructive behavior regardless of the consequences for their grandson. Jessica filed formal complaints against the police department for inadequate investigation procedures and failure to verify evidence before arresting a minor. The officer's body camera footage clearly showed the Rolex watch in Marcus's pocket during the initial response, proving they should have discovered his deception before traumatizing Tyler with arrest procedures. The department faced potential liability for damages related to Tyler's emotional trauma. Dan also investigated my parents' financial relationship with Marcus, discovering that Robert had been providing unreported loans and cash gifts that enabled his gambling addiction. Bank records showed regular transfers from their joint account to Marcus's checking account, often immediately followed by cash withdrawals at casino ATMs. They had essentially been funding his destructive behavior while claiming ignorance about his financial problems. The investigation revealed that Linda had used her nursing position to falsify medical records supporting Marcus's previous insurance fraud claims about work-related injuries. She had documented symptoms and treatments that never occurred, allowing Marcus to collect disability payments while maintaining his real estate activities. This discovery meant that both parents faced potential criminal liability for their roles in enabling Marcus's various fraudulent schemes. Tyler's counseling sessions with Dr. Foster revealed the depth of psychological damage caused by the arrest and family betrayal. He expressed confusion about why his grandparents had chosen to hurt him and whether he had somehow deserved the traumatic treatment. Dr. Foster emphasized that Tyler's recovery would require complete separation from toxic family members who had proven willing to sacrifice his well-being for their own purposes. As evidence mounted against Marcus and our parents, I realized that seeking justice would require destroying the people who raised me and permanently severing all family connections. The choice between protecting Tyler's future and maintaining family relationships was no choice at all, but the emotional cost of pursuing comprehensive prosecution felt overwhelming. Sarah reminded me that Tyler needed to see adults fight for his protection, rather than enable abuse for the sake of preserving dysfunctional family dynamics. Dan compiled a comprehensive evidence package that documented Marcus's gambling addiction, real estate fraud, false accusations, and our parents' financial enabling of his destructive behavior. The investigation had revealed a network of lies, manipulation, and criminal activity that extended far beyond Tyler's arrest. Justice would require exposing all of these crimes and ensuring that none of them could ever harm another innocent child. The discovery phase had transformed my understanding of recent family dynamics and revealed that Tyler's arrest was merely the culmination of years of escalating criminal behavior. Marcus hadn't suddenly decided to frame an innocent child. He had been building toward this level of cruelty through smaller acts of deception that our parents had consistently enabled and covered up. Rather than responding emotionally to the overwhelming evidence of my family's betrayal, I decided to approach their destruction with the same methodical precision that had made me successful in software engineering. Jessica advised that comprehensive prosecution would require ironclad documentation and coordination between multiple agencies, turning our pursuit of justice into a complex project that demanded strategic planning and flawless execution. My technical skills proved invaluable for gathering digital evidence that Marcus had tried to delete or hide. Using data recovery software and network analysis tools, I retrieved archived social media posts where Marcus had bragged about his gambling wins and complained about mounting debts. His deleted Instagram stories included photos from underground poker games and desperate pleas for quick cash that contradicted his claims about stable finances. Jessica filed formal charges against Marcus for filing false police reports, fraud, child endangerment, and conspiracy to commit extortion. The case was strengthened by Tyler's medical records, documenting trauma symptoms, and Dr. Foster's professional assessment of psychological damage caused by the arrest. Colorado state law included enhanced penalties for crimes committed against minors, making Marcus's actions felonies rather than misdemeanors. Dan's investigation expanded to include Marcus's real estate clients, many of whom came forward with stories about missing deposits and forged contracts once they learned about the formal investigation. Susan Martinez had lost $3,000 in earnest money that Marcus claimed was required for property inspections that never occurred. James Wright discovered that Marcus had been showing his house to potential buyers without permission, and collecting application fees for rentals that weren't actually available. The Colorado Real Estate Commission launched its own investigation based on Dan's findings, reviewing Marcus's license history and client complaint records. Commission investigators discovered that Marcus had been operating without proper continuing education credits and had failed to maintain required trust account procedures for client deposits. His real estate license faced immediate suspension pending the outcome of criminal proceedings. My investigation into our parents' enabling behavior revealed the full scope of their complicity in Marcus's criminal activities. Robert's accounting firm had been helping Marcus hide income from gambling winnings while claiming legitimate business expenses for entertainment and travel costs that were actually casino visits. The complex money laundering scheme involved creating false invoices and manipulating tax records to conceal the source and extent of Marcus's illegal activities. Using my access to financial databases and accounting software, I documented every suspicious transaction and created comprehensive spreadsheets that tracked money flows between Marcus, our parents, and various criminal enterprises. The evidence showed systematic fraud that had been ongoing for over 2 years, with Robert using his professional credentials to legitimize what amounted to organized crime operations. Linda's role in the conspiracy involved more than just moral support for Marcus's lies. Her position at the hospital had provided access to prescription medications that Marcus had been selling to supplement his gambling funds. She had also falsified medical records to support fraudulent disability claims, creating documented injuries and treatments that justified insurance payments for conditions that didn't exist. I contacted every former client of Robert's accounting firm and systematically informed them about his involvement in money laundering operations. Many clients immediately requested transfers of their financial records to other firms, creating a cascade of business losses that threatened the survival of the practice he had spent 30 years building. Professional relationships that had taken decades to develop crumbled within weeks as word spread about his criminal activities. The social media campaign I launched used Facebook, LinkedIn, and community forums to document the full scope of my family's crimes against Tyler and other victims. I created detailed timelines with supporting evidence that made it impossible for anyone in our community to claim ignorance about their character flaws. The post generated hundreds of shares and comments from people expressing outrage about adults who would traumatize innocent children for personal gain. Marcus's former colleagues in the real estate industry quickly distanced themselves from association with his criminal activities. Brokers who had previously referred clients to Marcus issued public statements disavowing any connection to his fraudulent practices. His professional reputation became so toxic that other agents refused to cooperate with him on property transactions, effectively ending his career even before formal disciplinary actions were completed. I also contacted the Internal Revenue Service and provided comprehensive documentation of Robert's tax fraud activities related to Marcus's unreported gambling income. Federal investigators were particularly interested in the money laundering aspects of the scheme, which involved interstate transactions and complex financial instruments designed to conceal criminal proceeds. The IRS investigation carried potential prison sentences that far exceeded state-level charges. The Colorado Board of Nursing launched its own investigation into Linda's falsification of medical records and theft of prescription medications. Her nursing license faced revocation proceedings based on violations of professional ethics standards and criminal law. The hospital where she worked placed her on immediate suspension, pending the outcome of the investigation, effectively ending her 40-year nursing career. Tyler's therapy sessions with Dr. Foster revealed steady improvement as he began to understand that the adults in his life were committed to protecting him from further harm. Knowing that his parents were fighting for justice helped him process the trauma of arrest and family betrayal. Dr. Foster noted significant progress in Tyler's anxiety levels and sleep patterns as the criminal proceedings advanced. Sarah and I attended family counseling sessions focused on rebuilding trust and communication following the crisis. Our marriage grew stronger as we worked together to support Tyler's recovery and pursue accountability for the people who had harmed him. The shared commitment to protecting our child from toxic family members created a deeper bond between us than we had experienced during easier times. The evidence-gathering phase revealed that Marcus's actions against Tyler were part of a broader pattern of criminal behavior that had victimized multiple families and violated numerous laws. Pursuing comprehensive prosecution wasn't just about justice for Tyler. It was about preventing Marcus and our parents from harming other innocent people who might trust them in the future. As the various investigations gained momentum, I realized that my family's destruction would be total and irreversible. The criminal charges, professional sanctions, and social consequences would eliminate any possibility of them rebuilding their lives or careers. The price of protecting Tyler was the complete annihilation of relationships with the people who raised me, but their actions had made that choice inevitable. 6 months after Tyler's traumatic arrest, the comprehensive legal assault I had orchestrated reached its devastating conclusion. Jessica's prosecution efforts had expanded into a multi-agency investigation involving local police, federal authorities, professional licensing boards, and civil courts that would destroy every aspect of my family's lives with methodical precision that left no possibility for recovery or redemption. Marcus faced 8 felony charges, including filing false police reports, fraud, child endangerment, conspiracy, and real estate violations that carried potential prison sentences totaling 15 years. The evidence against him was so overwhelming that his court-appointed attorney advised accepting plea agreements rather than risking trial convictions that would result in maximum penalties. His gambling addiction had escalated during the investigation, leading to additional charges for check forgery and identity theft. The Colorado Real Estate Commission had revoked Marcus's license permanently and imposed $50,000 in fines for violations of professional conduct standards. His former clients filed a class action lawsuit seeking damages for fraud and breach of fiduciary duty that would force him into bankruptcy even before criminal sentencing. The civil court froze his assets to ensure availability for victim restitution payments. Robert's accounting firm faced complete dissolution following the federal money laundering investigation. The Internal Revenue Service had seized all business records and client files while conducting a comprehensive audit of every transaction processed over the past 3 years. His CPA license was revoked by the Colorado Board of Accountancy, making it impossible for him to work in financial services anywhere in the United States. Federal prosecutors charged Robert with conspiracy to commit money laundering, tax evasion, and wire fraud related to his systematic concealment of Marcus's criminal income. The charges carried potential sentences of 20 years in federal prison, and prosecutors were seeking asset forfeiture that would claim the family home retirement accounts and all personal property accumulated through illegal activities. Linda's nursing career ended with permanent license revocation, following investigations by both the Colorado Board of Nursing and the Drug Enforcement Administration. Evidence of prescription medication theft and falsified medical records resulted in federal charges for drug trafficking and healthcare fraud. Her former employer filed civil suits seeking restitution for damages caused by her criminal activities while employed at the hospital. The local newspaper covered the scandal extensively, publishing detailed articles about the family conspiracy that had traumatized an innocent child and defrauded multiple victims over several years. The headlines described Robert as a corrupt accountant, Linda as a drug-stealing nurse, and Marcus as a gambling addict who had orchestrated false arrest of his own nephew. Community members expressed outrage about trusted professionals who had betrayed their positions for personal gain. Television news stations picked up the story when Tyler's arrest body camera footage was released through public records requests. The video clearly showed Marcus's Rolex watch in his pocket while he claimed it had been stolen, providing irrefutable evidence of his elaborate deception. Viewers flooded social media with angry comments about adults who would traumatize children with false criminal accusations. I systematically contacted every professional organization, community group, and social circle that my family had been involved with over the years. Church congregations, neighborhood associations, and volunteer organizations received comprehensive documentation about criminal convictions and character flaws that made continued membership inappropriate. The social isolation that resulted was complete and permanent. Marcus's former gambling associates provided information to prosecutors about the underground poker operations and loan shark activities that had motivated his criminal behavior against Tyler. These testimonies revealed the full scope of his addiction, and the desperation that had driven him to frame an innocent child for crimes that never occurred. The gambling debts had grown to over $60,000 by the time of his arrest. Robert and Linda's retirement savings were completely depleted by legal fees, restitution payments, and asset forfeiture proceedings. The house where I had grown up was sold at auction to pay victim compensation and federal fines. Their comfortable lifestyle disappeared as they faced the prospect of rebuilding their lives as convicted felons with destroyed professional reputations. Professional colleagues who had worked with Robert for decades issued public statements distancing themselves from association with his criminal activities. The accounting firm's clients had lost hundreds of thousands of dollars due to his negligence and fraud, creating additional civil liability that would follow him for years, even after prison sentences were completed. Linda's former patients and their families expressed betrayal and anger about her theft of medications and falsification of medical records. Several families filed malpractice suits claiming that her fraudulent documentation had interfered with proper medical treatment and endangered patient safety. The hospital conducted comprehensive reviews of every case she had been involved with over the past 5 years. Tyler's recovery continued steadily with Dr. Foster's guidance, and he began to understand that the criminal prosecution represented adults taking responsibility for protecting children from harm. His confidence slowly returned as he realized that his parents would never again allow toxic family members to threaten his safety or well-being. The trauma of his arrest became a story about adults who fought for justice, rather than a source of ongoing fear. Sarah and I celebrated each legal victory as confirmation that standing up to family bullies and enablers was the right choice regardless of personal costs. Our marriage became stronger through the shared commitment to protecting Tyler and holding criminals accountable for their actions. The experience taught us that chosen family relationships based on mutual respect were more valuable than blood relationships corrupted by lies and manipulation. The investigation had also uncovered evidence that Marcus had attempted similar schemes against other families in previous years, confirming that Tyler's arrest was part of a pattern of predatory behavior rather than an isolated incident of poor judgment. Prosecution would prevent him from targeting other innocent children who might trust him because of family connections. Community members who learned about the case became advocates for stronger protections for children facing false accusations from family members. Local organizations developed training programs for law enforcement officers about recognizing signs of family manipulation and ensuring proper investigation procedures before arresting minors based on relative complaints. The total destruction of my family's lives, careers, and reputations felt appropriate given their willingness to traumatize an innocent child for personal gain. Justice demanded that they face consequences severe enough to deter similar behavior by other adults who might consider sacrificing children's well-being to protect dysfunctional family dynamics. As sentencing dates approached, I felt no sympathy for the people who had chosen cruelty over protecting their grandson. Their actions had revealed character flaws that made reconciliation impossible and punishment necessary. Tyler deserved to grow up knowing that adults who harmed children faced serious consequences, regardless of family relationships or social status. The final chapter of this nightmare concluded in the most satisfying way possible, with complete justice for Tyler and total accountability for the adults who had betrayed him. Marcus received a sentence of 3 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised probation that included restitution payments to all victims of his fraudulent schemes. His permanent disbarment from real estate activities meant that he would never again have opportunities to exploit vulnerable families or children. Robert's sentencing proved even more severe, with federal judges imposing 5 years in prison for money laundering and conspiracy charges. The loss of his CPA credentials meant that his accounting career was permanently finished, and the asset forfeiture requirements left him financially ruined with no prospects for rebuilding the comfortable lifestyle he had enjoyed for decades. His reputation as a trusted financial professional had been completely destroyed by evidence of systematic fraud and enabling of criminal activities. Linda faced 18 months in federal prison for prescription drug theft and medical record falsification, followed by permanent revocation of her nursing license and prohibition from working in healthcare fields. Her former colleagues expressed shock and disappointment about her betrayal of professional ethics standards, and the hospital implemented new security procedures to prevent similar crimes by employees with access to medications and patient records. The civil lawsuits filed against all three family members resulted in judgments totaling over $200,000 in damages to Marcus's real estate clients, Robert's accounting customers, and medical patients affected by Linda's fraudulent activities. The financial penalties would follow them for decades, ensuring that they could never fully recover from the consequences of their criminal choices. Tyler's healing journey reached a triumphant conclusion, as Dr. Foster documented his complete recovery from the trauma of false arrest and family betrayal. His confidence returned stronger than before, and he developed remarkable resilience and wisdom about recognizing toxic behavior patterns in adults who claim to care about children. The experience taught him valuable lessons about standing up for truth and seeking help from trustworthy adults when facing unfair treatment. Sarah and I used the crisis to strengthen our marriage and create new family traditions that emphasized honesty, protection, and unconditional love. We built relationships with Sarah's extended family who welcomed Tyler with open arms and provided the positive grandparent figures he deserved. These chosen family connections proved more meaningful and supportive than the blood relationships that had caused such devastating harm. Tyler excelled academically and socially, following his recovery becoming an advocate for other children who faced bullying or false accusations from adults. His teachers noted his exceptional empathy and willingness to support classmates who experienced difficulties, qualities that seemed to emerge from his own experience of overcoming injustice with strong parental support. I established the Tyler Foundation for Children's Justice, a nonprofit organization dedicated to providing legal assistance and counseling services for children who face false accusations or abuse from family members. The Foundation's mission emphasized that protecting innocent children must take precedence over maintaining dysfunctional family relationships, regardless of social pressure to enable toxic behavior. The Foundation's work expanded to include educational programs for law enforcement officers about recognizing signs of family manipulation and ensuring thorough investigation procedures before arresting minors based on relative complaints. Training materials featured Tyler's case as an example of how proper evidence verification could prevent traumatic arrests of innocent children. Community support for the Foundation grew rapidly as people learned about Tyler's story and recognized the importance of protecting children from adults who abuse family connections to inflict harm. Donations funded legal assistance for dozens of families facing similar situations, and volunteer attorneys provided pro bono services for cases involving false accusations against minors. The media coverage of our family's story inspired legislative changes strengthening protections for children in the juvenile justice system. New laws required enhanced evidence standards and mandatory child advocate involvement before arrest could be made based on family member accusations. Tyler's traumatic experience contributed to systemic reforms that would protect future generations of children from similar abuse. My parents and Marcus became pariahs in their community, unable to rebuild social connections or professional reputations following their criminal convictions. Former friends and colleagues continued to express disgust about adults who would traumatize innocent children, ensuring that social consequences would persist long after prison sentences were completed. Their isolation was complete and permanent. Tyler learned that protecting loved ones from toxic family members requires courage rather than loyalty to dysfunctional relationships. He understood that real family members would never sacrifice a child's well-being for personal gain, and that adults who truly care about children will always choose protection over enabling harmful behavior. These lessons would guide his future relationships and parenting decisions. Sarah and I reflected often on the painful but necessary choice to destroy relationships with people who raised me in order to protect our son from further harm. The experience confirmed that blood relationships mean nothing when family members choose cruelty over love, and that creating safe environments for children sometimes requires cutting ties with dangerous relatives regardless of social expectations. The legal victory provided closure and validation that Tyler's arrest had been a serious crime worthy of comprehensive prosecution. Watching the adults who harmed him face meaningful consequences helped Tyler understand that justice prevails when good people refuse to remain silent about wrongdoing. His confidence in adult protection was restored through seeing his parents fight successfully for accountability. Years later, Tyler would remember this experience as the time when his parents proved their unconditional love by choosing his well-being over family pressure to enable toxic behavior. The crisis that began with traumatic arrest became a story of triumph, healing, and the power of adults who refused to sacrifice children's safety for the sake of preserving dysfunctional family dynamics. The foundation continues to grow and help families facing similar challenges, ensuring that Tyler's traumatic experience serves a greater purpose of protecting other innocent children from harm. His story demonstrates that surviving family betrayal with strong parental support can create resilience, wisdom, and compassion that benefit entire communities. Have you ever had to choose between protecting someone you love and maintaining family relationships that others expected you to preserve? I'd love to hear your thoughts about standing up for what's right, even when it costs you everything. Please share your experiences in the comments, and if this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming family challenges. Don't forget to share this video with anyone who might need to hear that protecting innocent people is always worth the sacrifice. Thank you for listening to Tyler's story, and I hope it encourages you to choose courage over convenience when facing difficult family situations. Remember that real love sometimes requires making hard choices, and that protecting those who can't protect themselves is the most important responsibility any of us will ever have.